Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Shelley Tasker Show, coming live out of radiosoapbox.com. It's good to have your company. Today's date is Wednesday, 23rd of April, 2025. Happy hump day, everybody. I am also streaming live on Rumble, and I believe YouTube as well. Fingers crossed. We've sorted the technical issues. We've literally spent the last hour trying to sort out this echo problem. Anyway, enough of that. I have an awesome guest lined up this evening. Let me just minimise that. Got so many things popping up on my screen. Right, Mr. Guy Anderson is joining us this evening, and he has not long published a recently book, Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids. Knows all things Tartaria and stuff like that. So, without further ado, let's bring him in the room. Right, let's remove... You're right, Guy, I can see you there. If you can unmute yourself and add your video, that would be wonderful. Oh, I love the technical side of it. If it's not going to work, we might just have to move over to Messenger. I seem to have lots of problems with Rumble at the moment. And I wanted it to work so perfectly tonight because, well, it's a great guest and it's a subject that I absolutely love. So I am going to give Guy a ring on Messenger because for some reason is not allowing him through. Guy, if you are there, can you click the red little microphone thing at the bottom of your screen if you can hear me? Right, let's just go via Messenger because otherwise it's just not going to work. Bear with. I might have to give Darren a shout in a minute.
Hello.
That poor man. Fingers crossed this will all work. As you can see, I've got this ridiculous set of headphones on.
Can you hear me okay?
Trying to make things work. Are you there, Guy?
I am, yeah. Can you hear me?
That's not working. Crikey. Just go make yourself a cup of tea, if you like. Oh, Guy's appeared. He's in the box twice now. I'm just going to reboot this page a second. If I disappear for a couple of minutes, then it's all right. Darren's trying to have a fiddle for me. Oh, this is so professional. One day it's going to run superbly. So I'm just going to have to try Messenger. Okay, bear with me, everybody. It's ringing, but I can't even hear it ringing. I'm ready to cry. Oh, it's connecting.
Hello.
Guy, you must be there, but I can't hear you.
I am.
Bear with us, everybody. Perhaps
Can you hear me now?
Put a tune on quickly.
Can you hear me now?
La la la, I'll sing to you instead.
Can you hear me now?
I don't like feeling stressed like this. It's been here literally for an hour and every week we've been having problems. Oh, I heard something then.
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you.
There's a slight delay.
Right. Are you there, Guy?
I am.
Woohoo, right. Hallelujah. So introducing our wonderful guest, let's start from the beginning, Mr. Guy Anderson. Good evening, Guy, and welcome to the show.
Good evening, Shelley. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, bless you. I don't know what was happening in Rumble, but I'm going to remove myself, actually, so I don't have to just see myself. So, Guy, I've been, it's quite funny, actually, because I've been studying the whole Tartaria thing. Well, not studying, looking at it for a fair few years now. And I've really wanted to interview somebody, and then you popped up, and I was like, oh, I'll message this guy. And you're only in Devon, you're only in the next county.
Yeah. There's not many of us down here, you know.
No. Well, it's such a fascinating subject, and I'm hoping, I believe your book is selling quite well.
Yes, it sold a lot more than I thought it was going to. In fact, over 4 times what I really hopeful.
Oh, that's good. I had it on my dining room table the other day, and somebody came in, a friend of mine, and he's like, "Oh, that looks good." Took a screenshot of it. So, yeah. So, tell us, how did you get into this whole Tartaria thing?
Well, it's all down to one person, a man called Max Eigen.
Max Egan, I would say.
Yeah. We sort of connected during lockdown. I didn't know anybody else was watching really any of the stuff he was put out. He was putting out there. There's a slight delay. It's really weird. I could hear myself a few seconds later.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Are you going to cope with it, or would you like me to put a song on and we come back? Are you sure?
I'll cope with it. Yeah, it's really weird. I'm trying to talk and then I can hear myself.
Hear yourself, yeah.
So it was Max, and I found him on BitChute, which unfortunately we can't access anymore in the UK.
No.
But that might change. We don't know, but I was a bit disappointed. So Max introduced me to Tartaria, this sort of mystical civilization that no one had ever heard of. And the more he spoke about it, the more I dug. And then I actually reached out to him and said, "Look, I've just seen your podcasts and your videos, and I'm the only person I know of that's talking about this. And I want to share this with everybody because I think it might help them. If people understand what they're truly capable of, with regard to sort of deceit and hiding things, then it opens up their minds to what they're capable of doing now." And Max just said that if you can save one life, that's enough, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
So it just made me want to dig.
And it's the thing is, it's such a vast subject, isn't it? And I've been digging and reading your book. It's sent me on endless rabbit holes. So the last couple of nights, I'm really into Rife, was he called? I probably said his name wrong.
Yeah, no, you haven't.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
I've retained some information. So for those people that don't know what Tartaria is all about, can you give them a little brief introduction?
Well, everybody does know Tartaria, but they know it under a different word, and that's Mongolia.
Right.
So when you look at anything in the history books or Wikipedia or anywhere that refers to the Mongolian Empire, that should really be the Tartarian Empire.
Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah, it's all been inverted. So it was a landmass and a civilization, but it spread across the world. The blueprints of how they build. So places like Crystal Palace in London, the World's Fairs that we're starting to see pop up from the late 1800s and early 1900s. It didn't matter where in the world those events were held or the Crystal Palaces were built, they're identical. So it was a way of building that was in harmony with the planet and the correct frequency. So they were building everything using cymatics.
Can you explain to the listeners what cymatics is?
Yeah, so it's actually a good example would be if you look at a church window, not the stained glass windows. They're normally like they look, I suppose the best analogy would be it looks a little bit like a four-leaf clover. Sorry, there's a really bad delay.
That's all right, you'll come across fine.
So yeah, look a little bit like a four-leaf clover. Now, when water is subjected to different frequencies, and one of them happens to be 528 hertz, that's the frequency the planet, or the Earth, if you like, resonates at. So everything living has a vibration or a frequency. And if you work with that frequency in harmony with it, then both elements prosper. So, for example, it would be very similar to growing something in a dark room with lots of bass going on. It's going to stifle it. There are experiments you can see online where people have played Imagine by John Lennon. Sorry, I've gone again there. Imagine by John Lennon. Now, if you can YouTube or Google that being played to a glass of water, and then it's shown under microscope exactly what happens to the water, and then they turn the music off and they start shouting abuse and anger at the glass of water, and you watch what the water does. So it shows you cymatics, the shapes made by frequencies being subjected to certain things like water or sometimes sand. And they would build everything, so every sound and frequency in that particular building, be it a church or a World's Fair, every frequency in there resonated correctly. So you felt euphoric because it would balance your chakras.
And that's how it should be, isn't it?
That's how it was. Yeah, across the world, that's how it was. And then it was all destroyed. Greed, power, control.
And you believe that all of the cathedrals and churches and stuff, they weren't meant for prayer, so to speak. They were all healing centres.
No. Well, I mean, Jesus said we weren't supposed to go to a particular place to pray or worship or meditate. That was something you did in solitude. That these buildings weren't created for that. The cathedrals, for example, that's a cathode ray. Now, that's an energy harnessing building that people would go into to feel good. And they would play pipe organs in there. And the organs would resonate again with the human body. And that would then heal any issues with organs. And that's what Raymond Rife was doing.
Right. And he built a microscope, didn't he, that could supposedly detect cancer. And I haven't gone too far. I'm only at the start of my rabbit hole with him.
It zaps it, basically.
Right.
And a friend of mine built one.
Oh, wow.
When he found out he had cancer.
And did it work?
Yeah, it did.
Crikey. Quite frightening, really, though, isn't it? Because I think the Cancer Act, is it 1939, the Cancer Act, where you're not allowed to, anything that's outside of the NHS or anything is not allowed to be shared.
Yeah, exactly. And again, that falls under the sort of control, greed, and power, really, because I think the parasites that are running this show, they're very low sorry, I've got a really bad echo again. They're very low vibrational. They really do get pleasure out of seeing us suffer. So there's that's involved. They don't need the money. They've got everything that they need, but their friends do need the money. And they own these companies, or the majority shareholders of these companies that are putting these drugs out there.
Right. It's crazy. I noticed you say that the parasites, you refer to them a lot in your book. And by that, you're referring to those at the top, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers, all that.
Above them, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're part of the problem. They're the 13 bloodline families we know about, but there are 13 hidden.
Oh, okay.
And the one you want to be looking at is Orsini. And that's the Great Pope, the head of the Vatican.
Right.
Pepe Orsini. That's the most powerful bloodline there is.
Okay. I mean, I never realised. I mean, there's lots I didn't realise. This is all a massive learning curve, but how much the royal family, our royal family, are, part of that bloodline group.
Yeah. Well, not my royal family. I don't want anything to do with them. No, I've got enough files to not want to go down that one.
No. So
they're not who we think they are. Well, not who most people think they are.
No, not at all.
They're not. No, I wouldn't want to be left in a room with them. Not if there was more than one.
No. So, I mean, this is, like I said, opened up so many doorways. And then I've got to go down this whole Starfort direction, because that's all part of the cymatics, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's perhaps the most beautiful example that you can see by just jumping on Google, just type in Star Fort. Now, you'll be told that they're defensive fortresses, but most are built in places where that wouldn't be really sensible or practical. They're normally built near water, and the shape of them is the same as a molecule of ice under a microscope when 528 hertz is fired at it.
Right.
They align to constellations as well.
And are they in line with like the pyramids and stuff like that as well then?
Not necessarily directly, but the whole planet is a complete grid and everything's connected. So the Vatican, just as much as the Great Pyramid of Giza, for example, they're all... You still there?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, sorry, the echo's gone.
Hooray, that's all right. My other half is here fiddling. That sounds awful, doesn't it?
It went really quiet for a second. Yeah, that did a bit. My partner's lying on the sofa, but she's fiddling with herself. Well, it's a phone anyway. Yeah, it just went really quiet again. So yeah, everything's connected. So all of the buildings that were within the Tartarian, not period, but sort of, I suppose, ethos would be better. All the buildings that were built on these grids were all connected. And some people actually believe that they had vacuum trains underneath all of them, and that you could travel across the world from one to another in, relatively short period of time.
When you say vacuum machines, what do you mean by that? What sort of...
Underground trains that work on air pressure rather than electricity or steam or diesel.
Okay.
A good example of that would be, I think it might be Moonraker. James Bond jumps in one and gets fired up a tunnel. Maybe even there's another film. There's a Christmas film. I can't remember what it is. It should... Polar Express. There you go. Polar Express. Tom Hanks, Pixar, I think it is. Check that out. There's one in that as well. But you'll find those online. Very similar to the London Underground.
Right. Wow. And the airships as well.
Yeah, that's how people got around. And the most famous docking station for airships would be the Eiffel Tower.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, and obviously here we've got Blackpool Tower, which was a docking station, and you can find, it's a little bit hard with Blackpool, but there are images out there of people boarding airships from the Eiffel Tower. There are images out there.
I mean, presumably they had all this technology, didn't they? And I mean, I've often thought myself, how do they create these buildings when we look at the rubbish buildings that they create now? And those buildings that have gone up long ago, how did they have the manpower to do that?
Well, it was a little bit different then to how it is now. I don't know how old the average person listening to this is, but I'm in my mid-50s, and when I was in my teens, there was a TV program called Tomorrow's World, and they used to show you all of these different time-saving devices that were going to come out in the future. I suppose a couple of examples would be things like a trouser press or a dishwasher or a microwave or now an air fryer, things like that just speed up time, because we're just going to have so much time on our hands to do all of these wonderful things we've always wanted to do. And all I see is people working harder than ever. And now most families, the husband and wife are both working, even if they've got young children, just to make ends meet. So, I was told that that was how things were going to be. So if you think about it, just in my lifetime, I've seen people go from having a lot of time to having no time at all. And there wasn't money then. We've now got this fiat currency that goes back to, obviously, to the Phoenicians. And again, it's an element of control. So if you remove money from the system and people have what they need, there's no one out there being greedy. And obviously some people are going to want more than others, but for different reasons. But if everybody has what they need and money doesn't exist, people have time. And it wasn't just people like us that were building these. I mean, the Tartarian Empire did include a huge number of giants, which is why some of the doorways are so high. And also you'll see in a lot of buildings, the windows are very high as well. And I don't mean that they go high up. I mean that the windowsill, if you like, would also be too high for the average person to see out of. So you've got to ask yourself, why would someone build something like that if you and I can't look out the window?
Good point.
These, the people building them were different, and this is a different civilization. So there's no money. Some people would refer to a lot of what architecture and art was produced during that period, and music as well, as it being the classical period. So this is the time that we see all of these beautiful statues and marble pillars appearing, and music like Beethoven, Mozart, Bach, that stuff coming onto the surface, and it's all the same period. But in religious terms, it's referred to as the millennial reign of Christ, 1,000 years, where Christ and the angels designed all of these buildings. So there's a lot of passion that's gone into it, and romance too. And now, because when the Tartarian Empire fell, they destroyed a lot of the buildings. And I think one thing they would have learned from that is that the cheaper you build them, the quicker you can build them, and the easier they'll come back down. And so when they reset us again, they're not going to want to deal with a planet covered in marble and granite. They want glass and metal and flimsy, very thin walls, breeze block and brick, things that will come down a lot quicker than the old world buildings. So I think there's a number of reasons why we don't build like that. We are not them. They were a different civilization. They didn't have money. There was no greed or power play going on, and they were built to last.
Yeah, which you certainly don't see now, do you? I mean, we've got houses going across the road, like starting off in wood and stuff, and my other half has explained it that they'll last like 40 odd years, and then it's like, yeah. So, I mean,
they don't want that.
When do you think the next reset is going to happen? Are you on the lines of kind of the whole Agenda 2130 or later?
Yeah. That's how far through my book are you? Because that's the last chapter. So
I'm not that far because I'm going down too many rabbit holes. But don't worry, because my memory is terrible. So
yeah. So Agenda 21 and Agenda 30. Well, we're seeing that now, aren't we? We're seeing it playing out. I mean, some people would say that started with the towers in New York. I'm just being careful what words I use here. So some people would say that happened then, and that was Jesus's birthday, the 11th of September. So it was a specific date, and they do like their dates when they do things.
They do, and I never knew that.
Oh, they love it. Yeah, 3, 6, 9, 13, 11. The angel's number, but they'll normally go with 3, 6, 9. That's normally the odd 11 here and there, but normally it's 3, 6, 9.
Right. But I had no idea that was Jesus's birthday on 9/11.
Yeah.
Why haven't I heard that?
That's one. That's one you would. That to be fair is a quick Google one.
Right. Okay.
It's not hidden. They only moved it to Christmas to stop people. They moved it to a pagan ritual. So during harvest and with farming, people didn't have two holidays so close together, and so that was why they shifted it.
Right.
So they do love the dates, but I would argue that Agenda 21 really the kickstarter for that was the pandemic that we went through. So that's when I think it began. I mean, people like Prince Philip had been saying for a long time that they wanted to depopulate, and he actually famously said he would like to come back as a virus and get rid of half of humanity. So they've been pretending that the planet's crowded for some time, and it's not. They overestimate the population quite severely. They've recently done it in China. I think they're about 1 billion over what the true population is. I think they're claiming 1.6 billion when it's 600 million.
Right.
And there's lots of people now asking now, where are all the Chinese? Where have they all gone? They started to disappear in 2020. And now 2/3 of the population has pretty much gone. So, we're severely underpopulated. They're doing things now to make life a little bit harder. Like here, where I am in the middle of Devon, we're on a farm, so it's quite flat. We've got good visibility, and we can see them every day up in their planes, flying backwards and forwards, making checkerboards in the sky, and it's getting harder for farmers. It's getting harder for people to make ends meet. Food shops gone up, bills have gone up, everything's gone up. So they're screwing us as much as they can. But we're then going to see, these 15-minute cities do look like they're going to happen. And I don't think it's going to be long before we find it harder to get a passport. Getting a mortgage is going to be impossible. The World Economic Forum have said, you won't own anything, but you'll be happy. They want to see home ownership gone, small holdings gone, keeping a little bit of livestock, even if it's a few hens. They're going to make you have a license for that and then regulate you. It's coming. In theory, this season we're in should finish on the 4th of July next year, 2026, 250 years from when New World Order started, 4th of July. But I think it's going to run till 2030. I think that it'll start to go horribly wrong next July. Things will really ramp up, and it'll all be over 4 years later.
Crikey. So, do you see then something like a future mud flood?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're going to try and do it all over again. Yeah. That's how they did it last time. We don't know how. There were a lot of natural disasters that happened, earthquakes everywhere. Then there was a comet in 1811. They call it Napoleon's comet. But there were quakes everywhere. One particular quake, which is referred to as New Madrid in America, that was so strong, that quake, that it actually turned the Mississippi round the other way to run the opposite direction. Metal flying through the air, sticking to metal. Wild animals wanting to come in people's homes because they were scared. It was horrific, and it went on for days. No sunlight. So yeah, it's a grim thing, and a lot of people suggest that wasn't a pole shift. It wasn't anything other than direct energy weapons.
Right, which doesn't surprise me because we have no idea. I always think then we've got ChatGPT, we've got a lot of technology, haven't we? Like Google Maps and stuff. What have they got?
Yeah, exactly. There was a fellow that used to chat on Gaia on Amazon. I can't remember what his name was, something Smith, and he was ex Area 51. He'd worked in most of those secure military bases. Said that he'd worked with aliens, met them, and when he came out and said what was really going on there, on the way home from the first interview he gave, his car was rammed off the road, and he was in intensive care for ages. He's had all sorts of problems. He said that when we were on the iPhone 6, they were on the iPhone 26.
Really?
Yeah.
Crikey.
Yeah. So he's talking a very thin piece of sort of perspex type that just folds in half like a credit card. It's the size of a credit card. You just open it up and touch screen, and away you go. Exactly the same, but just goes in your wallet.
That simple. Well, it would be easier, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and so yeah, this technology's been around for a very long time, and the direct energy weapons. You can look at something called the Vajra, which is Hindu for thunderbolt, and that looks just like a very ornate lightsaber. And Hindu mythology says that literally an electrical bolt used to come out of that. So it's a cross between sort of an old-fashioned sort of ray gun that you would zap people with on films like on TV shows like Star Trek, to actually resembling a lightsaber. So that's thousands of years old. Elon Musk has one on his bedside table. They're quite a sacred object. So there you go. In Hindu mythology, and these items do exist. You can buy one. It was a direct energy weapon, but a handheld one.
It's just crazy to think, though, that with all this technology, why they would want us so dumbed down. I mean, you said that we've had, what, 3 mud floods so far that we know about?
No, they've been going on forever.
Right,
These
okay.
floods. I mean, the most famous one would be obviously the Great Flood with the story of Noah, but more recently, a major flood would be the result of the Younger Dryas period that Graham Hancock's researched. But no, these floods were all local. So they happened in different parts of the world, along with fires. A lot of cities burnt down. The Great Fire of Chicago is one looking at, but you'll find almost every major town and city in the world had a flood or a fire that wiped out a lot of its architecture and infrastructure around the same time. So late 1700s into sort of up towards the 1900s, every city in the world had a fire. So it wasn't just mud floods; they had those here and there, and as a result, people had to dig houses out of the mud and would normally give up and leave a couple of stories buried under the ground.
Which explains a lot of houses actually local to us. Well, in Truro city centre and stuff there, the window is you have to walk down steps to get into them. And it's like,
Yeah,
I don't think we really did things like that to build a house, dig down.
No, you wouldn't do it, would you? It doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense.
And then if you look at buildings like perhaps in most towns or cities, if someone looks at their town hall, there'll be a series, or any building they've got that's that Greco-Roman style with pillars out the front, there'll be steps. There'll be steps up to the front door. You don't build steps up to the front door. You build the front door on the same level as the pavement or the road that it's on. Why would you do that? It just makes it harder for older people to get in and out, for youngsters to get in and out. Anybody carrying anything to furnish the building is automatically going to be harder. I mean, you can't wheel an old trolley or a sack barrow that they had back then, allegedly, up a series of steps very easily. I mean, the stuff's all got to be carried. So, these steps are there to put a front door in where there was once a large window or balcony.
Fascinating stuff. And I'm just intrigued so much as well, like the whole Cabbage Patch Kids situation and the orphan trains. Can you give the listeners like a briefing about that, how that all came to light?
Yeah, so the orphan train movement is, the narrative will tell us that it's 250,000 children shipped from New York across America, the Midwest mainly, to these children were orphans, so they were referred to as ragamuffins or street urchins, and there was a problem. New York was overrun. It was constantly in the papers that they had a problem. Too many children on the street. It was getting out of control. So a lot of farmers volunteered across America, the Midwest more so, to take young children in, and they could work on the farm, and they'd put a roof over their head, and officially they were going to adopt them as well. But what actually happened was the children would get on the trains. A lot of them were forced. Some of them were taken from single parent or impoverished families, stuck on the trains, sent to the other side of America. When they get off the other end, they perform outside the local Masonic lodge, and they're given numbers, and the people, the audience, if you like, the people that are interested, that own the farms and the mills and so on, would pick one of the kids, take them home. No paperwork it was exchanged, nothing was filled in. They gave them a new name, and sometimes they'd keep them, sometimes they'd move them on. So that's the orphan trains. But at the same time, you've got a series of postcards come out called Cabbage Patch postcards that depict children being born from cabbages. And they're also referred to as repopulation postcards. You've also got the incubators that went on display at the World's Fairs. and the inspiration from taking inspiration from those World's Fairs and the incubators. One of the first, well, the pioneer actually in movies, Alice Guy. She brought out a silent movie, but it was narrated, called The Cabbage Fairy, and that is her selling babies from a cabbage patch, and that ties in with the incubators that were on display, because you could buy the children from the World's Fairs. The backstory is that they came from hospitals on loan. These children, these premature babies, were on loan from different hospitals. So the Chicago World Fair, they were on loan from a hospital in New York. These are premature babies that need to be in incubators. And so that's the backstory, that's the narrative. But actually, a lot of these incubator babies that were on show were in their own sort of special unit or special building, and they would have a sign up outside quite often that would say a 9-month baby grown in days. So a lot of people believe that it was actually a cloning exercise, and they repopulated America in particular by cloning. They did it across the world by the looks of it, but more so in America. They repopulated through cloning, and these children were sent all over the world, and they were sent via the orphan trains, and that is the actual topic of my second book. I've dug into that a lot deeper. My first book just gives you bits of information on each area, each warren, if you like. But the second one delves more deeply into cloning, and it starts off really with regard to cloning. You know, if you look at the story of the Anunnaki or the Elohim, it's there for everybody to read. It wouldn't be the first time they'd cloned, in theory.
Yeah, you've just made me think of a memory actually from when I visited London many years ago, and I think it was one of these dungeon places where they would have deformed babies in jars and stuff like that, and you never really questioned at the time.
Pickled punks, yeah.
Punks, okay.
Pickled punks.
Right.
Yeah, that's what they're called, yeah. Well, that's the slang for them, but yeah. In formaldehyde. Yeah, there's a famous picture online of Leonardo DiCaprio holding one.
Yeah, I saw it. Yeah. So do you believe that those babies were they were growing them, and these were ones that hadn't grown, or these were newborn babies that hadn't kind of developed better, and they just kind of vinegared them, so to speak, to put them on show?
Failed experiments, I would say.
Right.
Yeah, because there wouldn't be any other reason to I mean, some wealthy people collect those. So, you know, what would be the purpose of that? Why would you want just to keep a collection of deformed babies in formaldehyde in jars? Why would you do that? But do you know what I mean? And unless it's for scientific value, then there wouldn't be. You'd have to be pretty warped, wouldn't you, to want to be collecting things
pretty
like
dark,
that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, I think failed experiments. Yeah, and I think we've got lots of examples of that through history, when something hasn't quite gone right. And they would put it down to mythology, but they just made something, it didn't come out quite right. I mean, I often wonder what on earth a duck-billed platypus is about, but I think there are failed experiments that they let into the world, and some that they stop, and I think they collect them.
Right. So what was that you just said, Doctor?
I think they collect them. I think that those pickled punks, the babies in the jars, are a collection of failed experiments.
Right. And I think it was your book. I'm not sure, because I've been delving on YouTube channels, and I've watched a couple of your interviews and stuff. And it's all about the timings as well, that all of these children arrived, but at the same time, it was just at the end of the war, and lots of orphanages were opened, and not just orphanages, prisons, things like that, centres. And at the same time, they brought in the Act for Asylum, oh, I can't remember. No, for insane
The Lunacy
people.
Act.
Lunacy
The
Act,
Lunacy
that's
Act,
it.
yeah.
And that was brought in at
Yeah,
the same time because apparently bereaved women that had lost their men in war were sent to these places. And then it was a theory that their babies were taken away from them and their children. And that's how we ended up
yeah.
with all these children.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of reasons they ended up with the children, but the Lunacy Act made it a lot easier for the state to take your child away because, as you quite rightly said, losing your husband in battle was one of the reasons you were declared insane. And the parents are then automatically orphans and become property of the state. But there were more reasons than that. That there was overreading, being over religious. Every month, if a woman had women's problems, that was classed as insanity. Wearing glasses, yeah, it just went on and on and on. There was very little you could do to not qualify, especially if you were a widow. I mean, that was it. So it was designed, that act, to take children away and get more people off the street. And by starting the Lunacy Act and opening up all of these asylums across the world in the most incredible buildings, again, you know, we're talking pillars made of marble and the most incredible art, all with these huge pipe organs inside and what looks like antiquitech on the roof. The equipment you need to harness energy from the ether seems to be present on all of these buildings, and landscape gardens. And this isn't where you put people that you want hidden from society. You don't send them somewhere like Buckingham Palace. That certainly isn't what they do these days. So these were repurposed buildings. Lock them away, and they were locked away for two reasons. One, if they wanted your children, they were going to lock you away, and if you were talking about how things used to be or complaining about how things used to be and not going with the new world order, then you were locked away. So they were trying to keep everybody that remembered or questioned the old world. They wanted them out the way. Yeah, considered insane because they're talking gibberish.
Right. And these church pipe organs, they've now all changed. Are they like the original organs, but they've just changed the frequency? I mean, I have no idea how that would work.
Some of them are going to be original, but obviously by now most of them will have been refurbished, I would have thought. Maybe on numerous occasions, but essentially, yeah, all they've done is they've changed the frequency from 432 hertz to 440 hertz, and that was the Rockefeller Foundation that managed to get that approved across the world. That became the international standard for church bells, organs, and music, 440 hertz, which is perhaps why if you went to the opera, let's say, for example, if you were listening to a choir or an opera in somewhere like St. Paul's Cathedral, just for an example, the feeling of euphoria you would have would be immeasurable with going to see a rock concert at Wembley Stadium. Wrong frequency, no cymatics, and you can see why a lot of people really do get sort of wound up at some concerts, rock concerts, rap concerts, heavy metal and grunge and things like that. People are going to come out of some of those angry and pumped up, whereas that doesn't really happen if you've just been listening to Beethoven or someone like Pavarotti. It doesn't tend to have the same effect. So I think they've been very careful what they've kept for themselves with regard to frequency and what they've subjected us to.
Sure. And it's the church bells as well. Did they take down all the bells in the war?
They did, yeah. They needed them for ammunition, apparently. But what's strange is if they needed them for ammunition, how did they replace them? Because they'd have had to have gone around after the wars and picked up the shells and the odd stray bullets to have enough material to make the bells again. So either they had enough material in the first place to make new bells, or they genuinely were melting them down and using them for ammunition, and then magically managed to find some more very quickly afterwards to replace them all.
Which seems very odd, doesn't it?
Yeah, so again, it's it's a lie. They didn't do that, and there are lots of photographs coming out now where and video footage here and there in certain countries where people have been digging, perhaps their foundations for a new building or a road or repairs of pipeline, and they'll find bells. They're digging them up. A lot of them are buried.
And do you believe that's to do with like their power, because how powerful they were with their energy and stuff?
It was the frequency. People used to go to church to feel better, to meditate, to feel better, to feel charged, and they didn't want that. These families like the Rockefellers and so, they didn't want that. There's no money to be made in someone being well, and and you lose an element of control over someone who feels euphoric and positive. You need to keep them low. They're more subservient when they're in a low vibration. The prison penal system, if you like, is a classic example of that, because you're charged and then placed inside a cell. That's a battery, and that's all symbology. That's them showing you that they're going to zap your energy. They're taking your energy from you like you are a walking battery. They're now going to drain you of that life essence, and that's what the idea is. Keep you low, keep you down, keep you stressed out, keep you ill, and that way you won't pay as much attention, and you certainly won't protest as much if you're in that state.
No. And unfortunately, that is what most of the world, we often talk about how you're going to wake people up, and they are too exhausted.
You can't.
Yeah,
you can't. I mean, there's some people that you can wake up and some people that you can't. And the ones that you can't are, a lot of people refer to them now as the NPCs. And but I actually think that the people that you can't wake up, no matter what you show them and how many times you do it, if they carry on going about their life like nothing happened the following day and have forgotten all about it, I think that's because they are the descendants of people that were introduced much later. So, and the reason for that is because our DNA holds memories. And I think that you've got a lot of memories in you from your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents. That's all in there, and we're all connected. So we can access this information if people out there say that it's something that they do quite regularly. They access information from the ether or from Gaia or just the system, if you like, the matrix almost. So I think that we have the capability to do that, providing we are connected. And I think a lot of people aren't. And I would argue that they're the people that descend from clones. They don't have the memory in their DNA of what happened before, because nothing did for them. There was no before. And that's why you might be into conspiracies, but your next door neighbor isn't. And there'll be people that within your family that aren't, that think you're mad. And I'm not saying that everybody that is connected to the past is out there seeking the truth and campaigning and looking into conspiracies. What I'm saying is they're more susceptible to it. And the people that do come from clones, and I'm talking about where both parents, going back generations, that it's just clone after clone, they're not going to carry this information. They've got no desire to worry about what happened before, because there's nothing there. They can't connect. It doesn't resonate.
Sure. Oh, it's fascinating, isn't it? All this, it's quite Doctor Who-y, really.
Yeah, it is a bit.
It is. And I'm just loving learning all of this stuff, because occasionally I go and sit in a sound healing bath. And, I was told by somebody at the church that I'm mixing with the devil. But, the whole idea is that the vibrations, the tuning forks and stuff is just resonating at a higher, whatever frequency, and you get healing from it. And
isn't that funny that someone from the church would tell you?
Yeah.
And I'm guessing the person from the problem with most people that go to church is they all share this same situation, and that is that they go somewhere and listen to someone read from a book they've never bloody read. If you read it yourself, you certainly wouldn't come out with comments like that. And if you read the Bible properly, you wouldn't go to church, because Jesus told you not to do that. When you walk in the door and you start saying amen, you're talking to Amun Ra. That's Marduk. That's a bloody Anunnaki. That's not someone. And the whole Old Testament, I mean, what is this benevolent, this person, this being? They don't sound like it. This is a bloodthirsty psychopath that appears to have an awful lot of anger and hatred within them. This is not someone that I would worship, or anybody should. I think they need to be careful what they need to understand, what they're reading and who wrote it. I think Lord Enki, there's something that switches from God to Lord. That's Lord Enki you're talking to. This is the bloody Anunnaki. You shouldn't be worshipping them or going out spreading their word unless you really know what you're talking about. It's not good. They're not good places. Not anymore.
No, but they feel that they're doing their bit, don't they? And they're walking with God and what have you. But some of them, I suppose, have got a bit of an open mind. But yeah,
I've met the odd one. I was ordained years ago, and I find the whole thing fascinating, because I've yet to meet anybody. I mean, obviously, I've met a lot of clergy over the years, but I've never met anybody that attends church, even if it's just occasionally. I don't know people that go every single week, but people that do go, and people that do follow and come from families that follow, and they might know the odd verse, the odd parable, but they've never read the Bible. And if you start mentioning about the books that they threw in the bin, like the Book of Enoch or the Book of Thomas, then they either won't know what you're talking about, even though they're referred to in the Old Testament, or they'll think that you're heretic. And probably that only because they don't understand what that word actually means, but they would use a word like that.
Yes. So your stuff then with the Bible, obviously, which I wish I knew more, and I haven't got the patience to read that. I've interviewed people that have talked about the Book of Enoch and stuff, and
that's an eye-opener. That's an eye-opener. Of course, in Ethiopia, that's still, all of those books are still within their Bible. They kept them all.
And are there many books around that have been saved from Tartaria times?
No,
of course not.
They're very difficult to get hold of, because what you're looking for, really, they started sort of knocking the buildings down, and this is the Jesuits. They started taking control of cities through money, through business and power. They started to get rid of buildings sort of the 1600s, and some of those were libraries. And one of the most famous libraries in the world, which was in Venice, and the name is completely gone. No, it's gone. I think it was 1911 that imploded, and that held more occult and rare books than anywhere else in the world, and that imploded I think it was 1911. I think it was in Venice. People will be able to find that. It might be called that might be actually called St. Thomas or St. Mark's, and it was a library, bibliothèque. So if people Google that one, they'll be able to see pictures of it imploding, and very similar to the skyscrapers in New York a few years ago. So they've destroyed a lot of these books, but of course they were still kept within certain families, and they're out there. They're hard to find and very expensive. But if you can walk into a secondhand bookshop and find a book that was written before 1776, then it's more than likely to be fake.
Right. Oh, but I'll keep my eyes open. I do love a good rummage in a bookstore.
Yeah, and if you do, it will have a J or an I instead of the first one. So that would be the only real indicator.
Yes, you mentioned, because Oh, typical, running out of time now. But you believe as well that we're like missing like 1,000 years off our timeline.
Yeah, well, someone to have a quick look into is Anatoly Fomenko. You'll probably find him on YouTube, but his paperwork is out there, his work, his books, they're all out there, and you can normally get them for free. You can download them from various places. But he did the research along with a couple of other Russian scientists, but this has been done before. I mean, Einstein said our timeline was out. I mean, anybody that's any of the great minds we've had have said exactly the same thing. It just doesn't stack up. The Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, just a period of time where nothing really happened. They think was just put in to bolster things up. So Anatoly Fomenko suggests that our timeline's been altered, and it's 800 years that it's been out by. They've increased it. So in 1776, when the reset happened and New World Order began, the correct year was 976. So if you have a look on the Empire State Building and see the Declaration of Independence being held by the Statue of Liberty, and some people say that's Lucifer breaking free from its chains, you'll see the M for the 1,000 is out of alignment with all of the other Roman numerals, and so that's a good indication. But with buildings and things like the Statue of Liberty and artwork and so on, they just put a 1 or an M in front of the date, because that was a lot easier than adding 800 to it. So it's actually 800, but 1,000 years for ease, really, on literature, buildings, and so on.
Wow. And that's I should have because I explained to you briefly in a message that I ordered the book for my dad for his birthday, and I've been not putting pen marks in it or anything like that. And after yesterday, when I ordered another one for him, I'm like, right, I can start underlining things, and because there's just so much every page, and I'm like asking Alexa, what does this mean? What does that mean? It's it's really good. So let's tell people where they can find you, Guy. You have a YouTube channel, don't you?
I do, yeah. So it's the same name as the Facebook group. So it's Tesla and the Cabbage Patch Kids.
Right.
And Guy Anderson, if they want to find me on Facebook, or they can email me, guypeteranderson@gmail.com. So however they want to, whatever's easier for them, if someone wants to reach out. If they want to buy a copy of the book, they can message me directly like you did if they want a signed copy, or they can get them unsigned from Amazon.
Brilliant stuff.
Patch Kids, yeah.
Yeah, and you're now launching a second book.
I am,
You're
yeah.
busy.
It's funny you said something a moment ago about you were having to look words up from my first book. So what I did was I realized that I wasn't necessarily preaching to the converted. I was going to be talking to people that didn't know what Tartaria was as well, and perhaps hadn't even looked into any conspiracy theories, and perhaps don't know who the Rothschilds are, or who the Jesuits are, what the Freemasons are really about. So the second book has an index at the back.
Oh, great
every
stuff.
Society, name, unusual word, religion, piece of scripture or text that they might not have heard of. The index at the back covers all of that. So
great
there's a
stuff.
little bit of information on each thing.
I do think, though, it does help you develop your research further, don't you? If you've got to do your own research, you know.
Yeah. And what I hope that the first book does is gives people a little bit of information on each area of Tartaria and all the associated theories and conspiracies that go along with it, because it is once you look at Tartaria, you then start talking about the orphan train movement and Nikola Tesla and World's Fair, so that there's lots of associated topics with it. What I wanted to do is give people a little bit of information on each one, and then I often ask people, what one is your favorite, out of all of them? If you had to go and watch a film in the cinema about one of the particular areas, which one would it be? And it's interesting to see what people say.
Oh, I'd love it. Oh, do you know, I was only thinking, wouldn't it be great if there was a movie made about all of this? Perhaps that should be your next point of call.
there are a few out there that you can watch that'll give you a little bit of an idea, but because it is hidden in plain sight. They have showed us on numerous occasions in lots of films, from Star Wars to Harry Potter and a lot of older films as well. Jules Verne, if you look at any of Jules Verne's films, you'll see Tartaria, buildings, technology, another film called Metropolis. So there are films out there where it's in plain sight, and that's why they do that. They want you to know what they're doing, in just the same way as they're following karmic law, and they believe karmic retribution is something Baal is going to hit them with if they have done things to us without giving us a fair warning or telling us. And I think that's why a lot of politicians lie. Don't lie. To avoid lying, they will often skirt round the question. They won't give a yes or a no to certain questions because they don't want to or can't lie. What they'd rather do is tell you in a way in which you dismiss it as fiction or a joke, or twist it slightly so you don't really understand what they're saying.
Yeah, I agree. Well, look, we've sadly run out of time, Guy. Thank you so much for your time. It's been it's been brilliant to chat about this, and I hope at another point you'll come back and we can chat some more.
Yeah, thank you. And sorry if it sounded weird to start with, but
no, you sounded fine with me. I'm sorry. It's like, we'll get there one week.
I couldn't just, it was so strange. It was as soon as I'd finished a sentence, I got to hear it again.
Yeah, it's all right. I've got all the gear, but no idea.
Oh, I know that one.
We're getting there.
Yeah.
Right,
that's
my
the
friend.
problem, isn't it?
Yes.
Nothing's as easy as it used to be.
It isn't, thank God my other half is technical minded, because every week, we're trying to fix it and something else comes up, but we'll get there. Anyway, I better let you get on, and thank you again, my friend. And
thank you.
Yeah, we'll catch up again at another date for definite.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
you
for
have a
having me
great
on.
time.
Take care.
Take care, Guy. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Wow, that was fascinating, wasn't it? Right. Mr. Scott will be on after this song. Let me find it. Will it play? off a bit short. Just a second. That was the awesome Graham Hart. This one's for the boys. Right. Now we are joined by Mr. Mallificus Scott for hour 2 of the Shelley Tasker Show. We are streaming live via Rumble. If you've got any questions, feel free to join in the chat. Warren, sorry, I've just joined in a little bit late here. Happy St. George's Day. And to you, my lovely. And I see there's questions and I've left it a little bit too late now. Sorry about that, Warren. Where is Mr. Scott? Okay, I'm just going to phone him on Skype because, well, he's not in the waiting room. Bear with. Start cool. Empty airspace. Come on, Mr. Scott, where are you? So we are halfway through the week. And yeah, how's it going for you guys? Been tipping down with rain yesterday. Spring, summer one day and autumn and winter the next day. We've got to do the good old British thing and talk about the weather, haven't we? Summer is coming, thank goodness. I don't know about you guys, but I'm longing for the sunshine. Garden's coming on. There's a bit of boring information for you. Mr. Scott, where are you? Doing this on purpose. Bear with me. I'm going to play another song, people. I'm sorry about that. And yeah, let's play a song because I've got nothing because I expected Mr. Scott to be here. Never mind.
No one's going to fix your life but you. You always have to take a step up in the ladder to be able to get to the top. You can't get to the top by flying up. Yeah. Human beings don't fly. For me, what has always worked is having the small next dream, you know?
And there we are. I'll cut that short because Mallificus is here.
Oh, I was just getting into that.
That was about 12 minutes long. It played the wrong thing. It just jumped on to the next song. Anyway, Mr. Scott, where the hell have you been?
Oh, I've been there listening in the background. What an interesting fellow.
He was, but where were you after the song?
What do you mean, where was I after the song?
Well, I tried calling you. You weren't in the Rumble studio. You disappeared.
Oh, I tell you what, it might be that I was listening. I was listening on the Rumble channel and yeah, and there's a delay, isn't there?
Oh, how unprofessional.
Well, I was actually in the background in the Rumble studio, but I didn't want to interrupt while your guy was chatting away and you'd run a bit over and I thought, oh, that's fine. I'll just sit and listen for a bit. But of course, there's a delay on Rumble, isn't there? So I should have entered the studio earlier. Would you like me to join on Rumble instead?
No, you've got a slight echo.
Oh, not again.
Oh, I tell you what, I'm ready to just throw the machinery out the window.
Okay, and Guy wasn't echoing for you, but I am. Is that right?
That is right, but you're on Skype, so bear with me. You know, this all sounds very easy. Well,
maybe I could join you on Rumble. I can just switch over. It's
Go
no
on,
problem.
do that.
All right, I'll be with you in the 2 shakes of a shaky thing.
So he says. Yeah, poor Darren. It's like I've got everything set up for Rumble and then I used Messenger to speak to Guy and then Skype. And we've really got to figure out, well, I say he has got to figure out how to get this working properly. And 1 week, it's just going to roll. Everything's going to be amazing, no problems. And I'll actually sound a little bit professional. Anyway, it is what it is. It is what it is. I'm not getting paid for this. You might tell. But hey, right. Mr. Scott is there.
There we go. Is that better?
You're still echoing.
Oh, my word. I don't really have an excuse for that now.
I mean, Warren, you're listening. Does he sound like he's echoing to you or is it just me?
Am I echoing?
Just a tad, but it's not unbearable.
Maybe if I just speak a bit quieter, would that help?
Do you know what? It'll be fine, Mallificus. I can hear you and understand you, so fingers crossed everybody else can. So how has your week been, Mr. Scott?
My week has been busy, I suppose, a little bit hectic. but I've had a lovely 4-day weekend, so I suppose I can't complain. But yeah, just wanting to do things. There was no music day this week, despite having designated Friday as a music day. Of course, it was the start of the Easter weekend, wasn't it? So we basically just kicked back. Didn't do a lot, I suppose. Got a few things accomplished in the house, but no. Other than that, work-wise, has been really busy. Obviously, because I had 4 days off, so you've got to make up for it somewhere, haven't you?
You have. But
Yeah.
hey, happy St. George's Day, by the way.
Thank you very much. I was wondering if anyone was going to remember that today. Yeah, I mean, interesting you mentioned that, actually, because Von Kurt, our mutual friend Von Kurt, messaged me saying, isn't St. George Turkish? Why do we, why do we celebrate that? So there was hang on a sec, here we go. So this is a message from the Candor webmaster, or probably Colin Todd at Candor. Says, this is the St. George's Day, 23rd of April 2025 Candor update. And he says, Happy St. George's Day to our readers and subscribers of English stock around the world. Yes, we know that we share St. George with other countries, and that Anglo-Saxon St. Edmund, or Edmund the Martyr, the original patron saint of England, has greater claim to the title. But for today, let us just be grateful that we're still standing, and know that many English folk will be looking around them, taking stock of the state of our land and the general situation. And then he goes on with a quote from G.K. Chesterton. But I dare say Radio Soapbox listeners have had a lot of G.K. Chesterton recently with Paul's show. He's been covering some Hilaire Belloc and some G.K. Chesterton, which has been great. So happy St. George's Day. I know, as I say, Edmund the Martyr would probably have more stake to the claim, but at least there is something that is still uniting Britons around the world, which is, we need something.
We do.
Oh dear. Yeah, no, but no, it's been a good week though. It's been nice. The weather's been a bit hot and cold, but yeah, I've had a nice 4 days off and just generally got stuff accomplished which I wouldn't have necessarily put in front of myself. But there we go. Never mind. What else is 4 days off for?
Exactly. However, I do get bored, and I'm waiting for regular work now because I'm just finding it hard to fill my days, Mr. Scott.
You are?
I am, because there's certain projects I can't do around the house till Darren's done certain bits. I have planted seeds this week, and I don't mean seeds as in brain seeds. I have planted.
I was going to say I plant seeds every day. Oh no! So what have you planted? Go on.
Oh crikey! Runner beans, beetroot, tomatoes, cucumber, herbs. I mean, I haven't got a clue how to do this, but I have bought some poles. I want to say what they called bamboo sticks.
Yeah.
And string, and I don't know what I'm going to use them for, but there's
you're
no
headed
rush.
in the right direction, my dear. You're headed in the right direction.
And I've got soil, so what could go wrong?
There's soil, seeds, a few sticks, and some string. What else do you need?
I know.
Bit of water, and nature will do everything.
I know.
For
I was
you.
I don't know why we need the string, but I'm sure we'll need it at some point.
You will for your runners, or anything that climbs, or like tomatoes get quite tall, depending on what you've got. But tomatoes get quite tall, and they're very soft, succulent stems, so they'll just blow over in the wind and break, and that'll be the end of it. So you need to tie them up to things. Keeps them
right. Well, we'll see how we progress. I mean, it's taken me so long. I've had these planters that Darren's built for me and stuff, and
I saw
was
them.
adamant. He's done a good job, but I wanted all organic soil and topsoil and everything like that, and then the organic seeds. And I realised I'm just running out of time, so I was in B&Q and just bought a load of seeds.
Yeah,
I was like,
chuck them in there, missus.
Just chuck them in, yeah. They're not purely organic, but, well, they're not organic at all. But hey-ho, we will see what crops appear.
We will. So it's, so you'll have your veg and your salad growing, basically, which is really nice. And it'll taste so much better knowing that you've got it out of your own garden. You know what it's been growing in. you know, any blemishes that are on it, you'll be familiar as to why they're there, and do you know what I mean? It's not like, oh, has something been eating that, or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's quite funny because I think we must have got to that age. We were discussing what to do at the weekend, and Darren was saying about this long walk you could do at a garden centre. And I was like, oh, we could do the walk, and then we could go and buy a new plant for the garden.
There you go. Yeah, you are knocking
This
on
could
a
be
bit
my
now,
new
aren't you?
hobby. Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
I did quite enjoy it out there. I bought some lavender plants and something.
Oh
I can't
yeah,
even
that's
pronounce.
it. That's it. That's it.
I'm going for
you've hit
Carrier
old
Garden
age.
of the Year.
You've hit old age now. If you're buying lavender, why don't you tie some of it up in little bags and stick it in your drawers to keep your clothes smelling nice?
I will when it's grown.
All old people used to smell of lavender when I was a kid, I'm sure.
No, I don't remember, but I do remember we had those massive, and they do like grow to be really big, the lavender, don't they?
Oh, they can do. Yeah, it depends on what type you get, but yeah, the French ones don't do so well over here, but they do eventually get very big, and they actually, despite all the gardening advice, they do actually like being pruned back if they get too woody and stuff. That you can cut them back as long as they're established. They've been established a year or two. You can cut them back, be quite violent with them really, and cut them back to nothing. They'll come back. So yeah, we inherited a lavender actually from my other half's mum and dad when they moved house, and I said, oh, I like that pot, because it was at their new place. She said, oh, you can have the pot if you want. She said, but you got to take the lavender with it. And I was like, I didn't really want the bloody lavender. It looks like half dead. Do you know what I mean? Hadn't been touched for a few years, and just it was all woody and had like these little leafy bits on the end. And I was just like, all right, I'll take the lavender. So we took the pot and put something else in the pot. We've got a jasmine growing up the wall. And repotted the lavender, had to cut a huge amount of the root ball off to actually just fit it in the next size pot down. And it got to springtime, my other half just literally cut it back, so it was just stumps growing out of a little ball in the middle of the pot. And it's come back lovely. Tis a big bushy thing now. Excellent. Really hardy plant.
Tis a big bushy thing. Lovely.
Yeah. Smells fancy. Yeah.
Ah.
There we go.
Well, there we are. That concludes our part on gardening.
Yeah, there we go. There's your gardening 10 minutes.
We could do a phone in on it. You are a gardener. Mr. Scott, what do you recommend? Yeah.
Yeah, most of the time it'll be just pull it out and put something else there.
So what other gossip have you got going on? What have you heard or not heard? What's going around in Cornwall at the moment?
Well, no, not really heard an awful lot, really. I mean, I've been kicking back and trying to relax and bury my head in the sand a little bit, I must admit. But no, it was, we mentioned last week, didn't we, about Farmer Pete getting the chair on the council there, so that was really good news. And he's a well-read gentleman as well, I have to say. He's he's a good chap. So no, but other than that, that's the last bit of good news to come out of Cornwall. I got another newsletter through from my local councillor, Dick Cole. That's Cole, not Hole. And never a better name for a councillor in a local area, honestly. And he is as well. He's Mabion Kerno, which is supposedly independent, but was usurped many years ago. And now they're just a bunch of people looking for, as far as I'm concerned, unless they want to prove otherwise, a bunch of people looking for the best brown envelope exchanges that they can within the council. Oh yes, I'll put in 20-mile-an-hour limits here. The public will love that. Yeah, thanks for the backhander. Yeah.
Yes.
I can't think of anyone that would, in their sane mind, want a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, particularly when our village, it's got 2 lanes go through the entirety of our village. You've been through our village. It's got 2 lanes, and on one side, there's always cars parked down one side. So the traffic going up through the village are permanently having to stop and let the rest of the traffic through. We didn't need a speed limit. So what ends up happening is you get someone that abides by the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, much to the chagrin of everyone behind them who's stuck because they're stuck in a long queue of traffic trying to get past all these parked cars, and you've got all the other buggers coming down at 30 mile an hour, and there's not a chance.
I know it's hard, but like at the road from us, they've had undercover speed police up there, and there's loads of people in Troon that have got speeding tickets. Bastards.
Yeah, and as I said before, I don't know what the figures are this year, but the year I got caught for speeding, which was it last year? I think it was last year. No, it was the year before. They were making £6 million a day out of the British taxpayer, out of British drivers. And £6 million a day equates to £18 billion a year. So it's a very well funded government department, very lucrative. So no wonder they want to stick up. And this is the thing that irritates me also, is you get all these little solar powered little speed things that tell you what speed you're doing when you enter a village, and they tell you to slow down if you're doing 31 miles an hour and it should be 30. And then they say thank you patronizingly afterwards, like only a machine can.
I stick my fingers at them every time I drive by.
Yeah, but
like it's a person. I'm like, oh yeah, right.
Wow. You'll be on camera there speeding through, flipping the bird at authority, and when eventually these things are automated to give you a ticket, you'll be banged to rights, won't you? They'll give you extra on your ticket just purely because you're flipping the bird at them while you do.
Probably. Oh yeah.
No, but all these things, they are deterrents at the moment. They are peaceful deterrents, but sometime soon, in the next few years, they will all become weaponized money-making machines. So, and this is just to get you used to them being there, you know. Oh yeah, they've been around for years. Oh, there's one in Quinchell Downs actually gives you a ticket. Oh, really? So yeah, it's just going to be one of those things. That isn't the case, by the way. Not that I'm aware at the moment in Quinchell Downs. If anyone living in the Newquay area is listening, that's not the case. But in a few years' time, it will be. All these little speed monitoring things, they'll all eventually just be. Because you've heard about this telemetric car insurance. I told you about it, didn't I? With Von Kurt got some car insurance recently, and your car insurance was null and void unless you had your phone on you at all times while you were driving. And not only did you have to download an app so that it would link and show that when you were driving and when it wouldn't, you had to download a separate app that would show the first app when you were sat in a passenger seat or when you were sat in the driver's seat. That's how accurate it is now. So it's going to get to the point where, they won't need to take a photograph of your number plate. They'll just pick you up, because it's all being monitored by insurance anyway now with this whole telemetric thing. Oh, yeah. He's doing 32 and a 30.
Yeah, and there's lots of these cameras anyway in works vans and stuff. I remember my son being cautioned because he was smoking in his van. oh days, they could see everything. Yeah,
inside and out. Yeah,
monitored. Big Brother is watching.
Well, and everyone thinks it's a good idea to have these cameras, dash cams. Yeah, I get it. But you think about the responsibility and the cause and effect. Half the reason these dash cams came in was not because people were dishonest during having an accident or anything like that. It was mainly because you had all these gangs going around, particularly up in Birmingham and those areas, pulling in front of someone and then slamming on the brakes or reversing into them on purpose to claim on the insurance for these vehicles. It was an insurance scam. So hence they've popularized these dash cams. And they're sort of saying, oh, isn't it a handy thing to have? But no, you think it's been born out of crime. It's been born out of a crime that was being perpetrated in the first place. And what a handy thing to take advantage of. So, yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if certain groups were in charge of these little crime syndicates in the first place. That's a good, easy way to ensure we can have cameras in every vehicle. Yeah. Oh, I'm suspicious, and I have such a suspicious mind. I just had a question here from Arthur in the chat regarding Britons. Are you aware of any tribes on this island other than the following 6? Before you've even listed the 6, I'm not going to know, Warren. So
He
yeah,
has put
you can educate
Scots,
Scots, Manx,
Liogren, English,
Cornish.
Crummy, Welsh.
No, not aware. Not that well read that far back. I go back as far as about the Boer War. Maybe a little bit of Napoleonic stuff, but yeah, Boer War onwards is kind of my forte.
Never mind.
No.
Well, but we are approaching the bottom of the hour, so would you like to start with your granddad's book? I have no reference this week because I lent your book to, well, my book. I lent it to Graham, and then he gave me a book to lend to you.
Is it We Fight Them in Gunboats?
Yes, that's the one.
Oh, I'm really. Do you know what? He's been promising me that since I think we went for that first drink at the Lanherne in Newquay. So.
Well, I must read it first.
No, you are to deliver it hitherto.
It's okay because I'll forget everything that's in it. So.
Well, all the more point that you hand it to me first, because at least I'll retain it, and you can not retain it anytime you like. It's not going to make any difference, is it?
Okay, all right. Well, it's here.
I'm joking.
I might just pop it in the post to you actually, because I don't know when I'm going to next see you.
Well, I mean, yeah, I might be passing, or you might be passing in this direction. Who knows? We'll organise something fairly soon. We'll organise something fairly soon. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, did you? I'm going to get moaned at if you don't do a xylophone. Patrick's going to moan at you if you don't do a xylophone.
I'll get it out. I'll get it out. As Warren always says, xylophones' lives matter. Don't think I can promise you a tune though this week. The hills are alive with the sound of music. I can't go any lower.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, that's good. I think that was pretty bang on. Yeah. Guys, certainly got a lot more complicated since the first shows. That's not to take away. That's not to take away anything from your technical ability when it comes to a 7-note xylophone.
A kid's one at that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, for a kid's one, you're making it sound amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
High praise indeed.
Stop stroking your ego now. There we go.
I know. I shall be entering talent shows. Right, over to you.
Yeah, I can't imagine it going down brilliant. Well, we'll definitely make the outtakes on X Factor. Definitely. Probably just for the go you'd have at Simon Cowell afterwards, I would imagine. Okay, so quick disclaimer before we start. If I'm reading, I'm reading a book, folks. Everything, unless I say otherwise, everything I'm about to say comes from my granddad's book, Hidden Government, that was written back in 1954. If anyone has a problem with anything that is read hereafter, I suggest you look around the world we live in and shut your mouth. No, I don't mean that. By all means, contact me, mallificus@outlook.com. My idea is not to set out to offend. It's simply to bring to light information that isn't necessarily in mainstream education. How about that? That's as good enough disclaimer as I need. Although I did like the first caveat, to be honest. So anyway, we're partway through the chapter, Palestine and the Plan. And he'd spent the first part of the chapter talking about the legitimacy of the Jewish claim to Palestine, now Israel, in the first place. We also touched a little bit on the Balfour Declaration, and we also touched a little bit on Lawrence of Arabia. And just to clarify, I got a message last week. I'm aware that Lawrence of Arabia died in 1935, I think it was, 35, 36. It was well before World War II. My reference towards World War II is the fact that we all knew full well, or should I say they all knew full well at that point, that World War II was going to occur by hook or by crook. And what I find very interesting about the Lawrence of Arabia thing is that he was a household name. He had been used... I tell you what, there's been a really good broadcast recently by Dr. Peter Hammond on Andrew Hitchcock's show. So if anyone wants to go to achshow.com, The last interview with Dr. Peter Hammond was absolutely phenomenal and so well researched, as it always is with Peter. But Peter touches on the conspiracy around Lawrence of Arabia's death, and there were quite a few witnesses to his death. 3 witnesses described him being hit by a car, but when the inquest came, that car had disappeared, including the mechanic's description of the bike and all that kind of thing. Loads of things had disappeared. Prior to his death, he was involved. As I said before, he had refused to go back and serve in the army. If a war was brewing, he decided that he would join the RAF, and he tried once to join under a false name and was refused, and then was told from very high up, or the superior officer was told from very high up, that he had to take this man on anyway, regardless of who he was calling himself. So he joined as a mechanic, but also he around the time he was involved very much so, as I sort of touched on last week, he was involved very much so with the with Mosley's Black Shirts Party, which was the British Union of Fascists. He had his ear to the ground in all sorts of different places because he was very anti the war, because he realized how he had been used. You know, the guy refused a knighthood from the king for his deeds over in the Middle East. He refused a knighthood because of how the Arabs were treated after he left. So that shows you how vehemently he was opposed to all that. So when the Second World War came about, he was also opposed to that. And there was rumors that he was being lined up for a meeting with none other than Adolf Hitler. And if that had taken place, you know, such a prominent British figure, it's rather like Lady Diana in our era, Princess Diana in our era, going to visit, I don't know, Saddam Hussein and smoothing everything out, you know. So, yeah, it's... So we touched on all that. So I've digressed a little bit there just because of the question I got last week. So we are talking. He's therefore now talking in this little section of the chapter about their claim, them gaining Palestine. So as for the first claim, consider this. So this is from the book now. As for the first claim, consider this. They had been wandering and settled in every land that could stomach them for over 20 centuries without once even showing this determined and united resolve to claim, much less return to Palestine. Why then this sudden upsurge of love that was willing to sacrifice all for its ideal? Might not one be justified in thinking it was somewhat resemble the story of a missing wife who found her long-lost maternal instincts and wifely duty again and returned home as soon as she heard that her husband had inherited a fortune? As for the second, and much more likely for Jewry's sudden passion for the land they had abandoned all those centuries ago, consider the nature and the extent of the undeveloped wealth of Palestine, probably greater than in any one of the same size throughout the world. The late Lord Moyne, High Commissioner, openly set his face against the monopoly of this vastly undeveloped wealth to any nation or race. So he was against anyone settling there and developing its wealth. Yeah. He was assassinated by the Stern Gang while the president of the Zionist Federation boldly boasted, "The key to the doors of Palestine are not in the pocket of the High Commissioner, but in the pocket of the Jews of New York." And this, through the Palestine Corporation of New York. The basis of the struggle in Palestine is therefore obviously a struggle for the monopoly of wealth there, and in the Dead Sea area, and indicates the answer in stone cold reality. So the following is an extract from a publication, Production of Minerals from the Waters of the Dead Sea Area, 1915. Okay, so the book was written in 54, so this is a study dating back to 1915, minerals from the Dead Sea Area. So potassium chloride, 200 million metric tons, magnesium bromide, 980 million metric tons, Sodium chloride, 11,000 million metric tons. Magnesium chloride, 22,000 million metric tons. Calcium chloride, 6,000 million metric tons. Potash, inexhaustible. Carlinite, in excess of potash. Oil, estimate not known, but proved to be present by the Standard Oil Company. Gold, worth approximately 5,000 million, estimate of a French scientist. These facts were not lost upon Parliament, as the following extracts from a speech by Major Legbook in Parliament July 1948 will show. As long ago as 1864, it was suggested to the Turks that potash could be produced from the Dead Sea. The date of that is important because it's preceded by 33 years the First Zionist Congress of 1897. Since then, various Zionists have commented on future economic prospects, and at a meeting addressed by Mr. Ettinger on the 29th of May 1929 of the Zionist Federation of Sydney, Australia, Mr. Ettinger is recorded to have said this when referring to the Novomeysky concession, which has since become the Palestine Potash Company. Had we lost this concession, our whole future in Palestine might have been in danger. All these matters are of an economic nature, but it is in this sphere our political work is most important. A year before that, the Jewish head of the ICI, Sir Alfred Mond, who later became the first Lord Melchett, addressing a conference of Zionists and non-Zionists in the Biltmore Hotel, New York, on the 20th of October 1928, said, in urging non-Zionist Jews to join the Zionist movement, "Let me tell you, you cannot afford to wait. While we are discussing, other people are acting. Whereas we have reports to the possibilities in Palestine, Gentiles are acquiring the land and beginning to take possession of all the best things in the country. If we do not get together and do something within the next 5 years, the opportunity may be so slight, and the ideal we have set before us in Palestine may never be realized. I am not troubling about the economic development of Palestine. That is assured. The problem is, who will do it?" So, the following had a direct bearing on the sordid and explosive quarrel over Palestine. Rufus Isaacs, later Lord Reading and Viceroy of India, interesting person to look up, folks, Rufus Isaacs, if you get a chance. He had his hands in all sorts of things. Conducted an agreement between the British government and Washington in 1917. It is vital we should know the details of that agreement because it's believed that important concessions to Jews were given by this agreement. What were they? Knowing this, we could possibly learn the beginning of the conspiracy which reached its zenith in the imbroglio over Palestine. Now, I've tried to look up what that agreement is, and I've come up with blank cards. So there's still no information on it, like easily publicly available. So the Reformed Jew H. Klein says that the British government gave a Zionist syndicate called Palestine Limited all the oil, potash and other minerals of the Dead Sea. This syndicate was composed of Lord Melchett. There's going to be some other names you'll recognise now here, listeners, and Shelley. Warburg, Guggenheim, Lehman and other Zionist Jews. Mr. Klein values these materials at $500 billion and asserts that the invasion of Palestine is for them. That is a quote from a book called Traitors by a guy called Armstrong. Some listeners are probably familiar with that book. The Patriot of August 1948 quoted Dr. Homer, M.A., SCD, and coming from one with great personal and scientific knowledge of Palestine, what she says is admonitive. Long ago, I came to the conclusion that financial Jewry, both Zionist and non-Zionist, were furthering the aspirations of fanatical Zionism for its own ends, to gain the possession of Palestine, and that it would be kept fallow until such time as they could be developed for the aggrandizement of financial Jewry. Financial Jewry has undoubtedly supported the aims of Zionists, moderate, political and economic, because it seeks the political and economic advantages in the struggle for world domination, which Jew-controlled Palestine would afford. The late Mr. Ernest Bevin, a foreign secretary whose untiring labours received the admiration of most people, staked his reputation on settling the Palestine question, which, as we have seen, is no question. Mr. Bevin was betrayed by personages behind the scenes, and is likely that he knew that himself. For instance, the settlement was made impossible by President Truman. With the Jew vote and the general election in sight, blew negotiations sky high by demanding the immediate entry of 100,000 Jews into Palestine, and at a time it was difficult enough, in all conscience, to deal with the situation. It is reported that Truman was warned before the presidential election in November 1948 that he would lose the Jewish vote if he supported the resolutions submitted to the UNO by Great Britain for calling of sanctions against Jews if they did not withdraw from Negev in Palestine, now which had been taken from the Egyptians by the Jews during a truce. So underneath here it says Count Bernadotte, who was appointed mediator in the Palestine dispute, expressed, so while this meeting was going on, Count Bernadotte, who was appointed mediator in the Palestine dispute, expressed the opinion that in all fairness the Negev should be given to the Arabs. He was assassinated. Moving on. A cable was sent from New York to Paris, where the delegates were meeting at the time, informing the British delegates that the USA no longer backed the proposed sanctions to which the USA agreed. The diplomatic policy of the British Commonwealth had to perform a contortionist act, and became subordinate to the exigencies of the USA general election, i.e., the British foreign policy became subordinate to what was going on in America because of the vote. So to put the kibosh on President Truman carrying through with an agreement that had already been come to, he then turned around and obviously said, right, I want 100,000 Jews exported into Palestine. Which left the Brits in a difficult situation. So I'm just sort of summing those three paragraphs up there. So, speaking of communist infiltration into trade unions, on the 15th of September in 1948, Mr. Bevin remarked, "We are up against a plan." Indeed so. Not only the trade unions, but in Palestine and every other country. We are up against a plan. The plan. As Protocol 9 says, the weapons in our hands are limitless ambition, burning greediness, merciless vengeance, hatreds, and malice. And Protocol 7 admonishes, in a word, to sum up our system, and this will blow you away, Shelley, when you think about various world events, what they call black ops, that kind of thing. In a word, to sum up our system of keeping the governments of the Goyim in Europe in check, we shall show our strength to one of them by terrorist attempts. We must be in a position to respond to every act of opposition by war with the neighbours of that country which dares to oppose us. But if these neighbours should also venture to stand collectively together against us, then we must offer resistance by a universal war. Mr. Bevin was right. We are up against a plan. The plan, the provisions of Protocol 7 and Protocol 9 are rapidly taking shape. At a Manchester Socialist conference, Mr. Bevin admitted, it's really a war between Jews and Gentiles. The Jew Karl Marx said that communism can never conquer the world before the British Empire has been overthrown. The age-old plot against Great Britain is made clear clear by Jew Abelin in his book. He writes, "The Jews will not get Palestine until the fall of English imperialism." And the late Sir Stafford Cripps added, "It's fundamental to socialism that the British Empire be liquidated." How did he get a knighthood, that guy? Sir? Anyway, there are obviously certain British politicians, and you'll love this paragraph, Shelley and listeners. There are obviously, and forget that he's writing in 1954, all right? There are obviously certain British politicians and public men in league with the Zionists, and their identity is a matter for the electors of Great Britain to demand, if for no other reason than the Palestine betrayal. Put a premium on aggression and clamour, as we know, to our cost and shame. As these pages are written, Egypt is rattling the sword in the hope that it will persuade Great Britain to scuttle from the Suez Canal, thus cutting our lifeline with Australia, New Zealand, India and the Far East. Should any British politician agree to concede to Egyptian demands, his or her identity as a traitor will be clearly exposed. Before we leave this chapter, there is a matter which could well have had a direct influence on the sordid story of Palestine, amounting to betrayal of the nation to Zionist intrigue. The late Chaim Weizmann, it's spelt Chaim, but it's pronounced Chaim, I believe. Chaim Weizmann, the first president of the Israel government, a Russian-born Jew, an ardent Zionist, came to Great Britain, early in the century to study chemistry. By the outbreak of war in 1914, he had become a skillful research worker. At the period of serious crisis in the production of munitions, Weizmann is said to have discovered an important high explosive. Mr. Lloyd George, then Minister of Munitions, realizing the immense value of his discovery, is reported to have asked Weizmann what royalty or reward he would expect for his valuable contribution to the war effort. And for that, Weizmann declined monetary reward, instead asking for an assurance that the British government would recognise the claim of his race to Palestine on conclusion of the war. So when one reflects upon the Balfour Declaration and the secret Anglo-USA agreement in Washington in 1917, conducted by the late Lord Reading, it is reasonable to assume therein resided the ingredients for complying with Weizmann's request for support of the British government in the outrageous Jewish claim of Palestine. So that's a really interesting, because obviously that's publicly known now, what Chaim Weizmann did. That's publicly known, but I think when Grandad was writing this book, it wasn't necessarily, everyday public knowledge. So it's interesting, isn't it, that after Chaim Weizmann comes here to study, he creates this really impressive explosive, which, doesn't half help our war effort. And when asked, what can we give you in return for the use of your brilliant discovery, he says, nothing, I don't want any money. I just want you to recognize that Palestine belongs to the Jews. That's a very strange request, really, for someone that's in employment as government research. But nevertheless, we then have the Balfour Declaration, which we covered earlier in the chapter, which, as far as my granddad was concerned, was nothing more than, how did he word it? Where are we? Where are we? There we go. Which in fact was not at first more than an expression of genteel and pious personal opinion uttered by Arthur J. Balfour as a guest at a public dinner. So it was never even initially written down. Yeah, but now we have it written. The Balfour Declaration is it's signed and sealed and put into government policy and blah 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 blah. That and the fact that there was this secret meeting, which I still haven't been able to dig anything up on either, between Lord Reading or Rufus Isaacs. If anyone knows, if anyone can shed any light on that, please let me know. Mallificus@outlook.com. Because it would, your granddad said back then, it's imperative that we should know what happened in that meeting, because it's obvious that a lot of concessions were made towards the Zionist claim to Palestine.
Oh, you've got me wanting to go down a rabbit hole now. I love trying to find things out.
Yeah, well, Rufus Isaacs, that's a good place to start. But obviously, this Anglo-USA agreement in Washington in 1917, that was before the war. That was before the First World War ended. You know.
Yeah, it was all planned.
Yeah, it's all, the machinery is all working at high speed at that point. Yeah, Britain is losing, as Peter Hammond pointed out on Andy's show, Britain was losing the war left, right and centre. We had all these dreadful losses, all these dreadful defeats. We had the Battle of the Somme, which ended up with 1 million people, 1 million Brits killed or wounded, for the gain of about 4 kilometres of land, which they lost again shortly afterwards. And what was the fucking point? Excuse my French, but, it doesn't half make me angry. You think, with the story, you had my mum on at the weekend, and she told you a part of a story that I'd not actually heard that section of before, about my granddad's friend when they went out, into the field. They were told to go and take out something that only a handful of them were allowed to go, and they were likely not going to come back. And that was when Granddad had a shell go off next to him and filled him full of shrapnel, left him blind in one eye and deaf in one ear. And his mate, who was a piper in the regiment, he turned round and he just disappeared. He never saw him again. He would have just been scattered over the landscape.
Yeah, yeah.
What for? Makes me so angry. It does. Still now. And I can't understand why people wouldn't be angry about that.
Because they don't know the in-depths, do they? Unless they know people that were in the war, unless they've learned about... I would never have had, really, you see movies and stuff, don't you? And you think that's harrowing enough, but I know a lot of them, they're just false anyway, to a degree.
Yeah.
But when you're reading in-depth encounters, I don't know why, I picked up Hellstorm again yesterday, because I'm about 3/4 of the way through it, and just read another chapter. And again, it's just rape and pilgrimage.
Yeah.
They just raped their way through Germany.
Yeah, they did, yeah.
Even after saying that the war was over, they still carried on.
Yeah. As I say, as I'm aware, after everything, all the dust had settled, there was still another 50,000 rapes recorded in Berlin alone, and that's just the ones that were recorded. 50,000.
Yeah. Oh, no, it's disgusting. And it makes you wonder how many of those people, you've got the people that served in the war, they've got PTSD from it, horrendous nightmares and things like that. I wonder how many of those that went home have the same thing, but for what they did, because they were all doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll never know. We'll never know. I would like to look into that because I'm a bit sick.
Yeah.
No, who's going to write? Oh, I don't know. But I just can't, it's like those people, realistically, just the horror of the whole raping of Germany, from what I can tell, it was just rape. The whole country was raped the whole way through. And not
it's
just
certainly
once.
It's certainly the impression that the book leaves, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
And not just women as well, but...
No. Old people, children. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's quite graphic, that book, isn't it? And it was saying about how how some of the women tried to make themselves look uglier and older and stuff, but they didn't care.
No.
They're just brutal animals, evil. I think if I was in that position, and you've got to kind of try and join in, otherwise you're going to be shot. But that's the thing, isn't it? It's like if you don't join in, you're dead. I don't know. It's a really freaking... something I'm thinking about, really.
Yeah, I think I'd rather try and answer for taking my own life than I would.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you're not supposed to. You're not supposed to. I think it's only Buddhism that agrees with you taking your own life, because it's the only life that you're allowed to take. But all other religions frown upon it deeply, I'm sure. But I think I'd rather try and get to the pearly gates and answer for that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, There we are, Mallificus. That rounds up another week.
It does. Well, look, next week is an exciting chapter, State Control and the Plan. And it starts with a lovely quote from Stalin, which is, "There is no justice. There is no such thing as eternal justice. Laws are merely the means whereby those in power carry out their will. Human beings have no God-given rights and are therefore subject to be taken away by man." How'd you like that?
I love it. Because he's a character I want to know a lot more about as well.
Don't, because the more you find out, the more... Mind you, he got his comeuppance. They all do. They all get their comeuppance.
Yeah. I remember when I was at a car boot sale last year, actually, this lady was selling all of her dad's old books and stuff, and there was lots of books. I mean, they weren't cheap, and she said, I've had to like work out off eBay and things like that, but there was books about Stalin and stuff like that. You would have had a field day.
I would have done. I'd have spent a fortune, and I'd have had another big stack of books collecting dust that I haven't got to yet.
Yeah.
Love it.
There's any more coming. Right,
I love
lovely.
it. No. Yeah, okie
Well, thank you
dokie.
very much. And
Brilliant.
have an awesome
Thanks.
week, everybody. We'll be back the same time next week.
Thanks for having me back on.
Toodaloo.
Cheerio.
I'm on government.
I think we're still streaming on Rumble because I can't work out. I've lost the page.
Oh, no, you've lost the button. Well, thanks for
I've
listening,
lost the
folks.
button.
I was going to say thanks for listening, folks. Thanks for the messages, Warren.
Yeah, thanks for that, Warren. Oh, dear. Now that doesn't even want to close. Oh, lordy. I want a new computer, empty, and I want somebody to set it all up for me.
It can be a brain strain, can't it?
Oh, crikey. I should, Coco. I'd have to just go into Rumble Studio again and press end. Let's enter